Hello there Gotham fans, and I know it's been a while since we had our last video up, but this is the Season 2B review, so that is Wrath of the Villains. But before we start, let's issue a spoiler alert for Season 2B, because we're going to be spoiling major events from that second half of the second season. So strap yourselves in for a wild ride guys, and I hope you enjoy this week's episode. Okay, so the second half of the second season of Gotham was titled The Wrath of the Villains, or Wrath of the Villains, and I assume it's because obviously the villains showed their wrath, fairly obvious, and basically we had a lot of villains escaping from Arkham, villains being put in Arkham, then getting back out again, villains killing people, villains murdering people, villains being resurrected. All the villains are kind of coming together now. We've had villains escaping to Gotham. You know, everything's just kind of happened this season or the second half of the season to do with villains becoming wrathful or whatever. So my 5 words or under then this week, I've got 4 words, and that is better than 2A. Better than 2A. 2A, you didn't know, was the first half of season 2, which was Rise of the Villains, and then we have Wrath of the Villains. So yeah, it's better than it, I think, because I just enjoyed it more. I felt like it was a really good series. It was a lot better. The second half of the season was a lot better than the first, and I think my overall rating is bigger, but we'll come to that in a bit. So we're going to start off with my top 5 events of the second half of the second season. So, number 5 then. Number 5 is the introduction of Mr. Freeze, which I really liked, and that was in episode 12, Mr. Freeze. So, I really did enjoy that episode. Not quite as much as I thought I was going to, but I did like the introduction of Mr. Freeze. It was really faithful to the comic books. It kind of gave an origin story to the character that we are so familiar with in the comic books and in the films that we knew the backstory, but it's never really been massively portrayed on screen or in the comic books as such. It's just really been it's been kind of transferred by word of mouth from Freeze to Batman and stuff like that, but it's never really been actually shown on TV, so I really like that. Now, number 4 then is Mooney's resurrection, and that happened in episode 21, A Legion of Horribles. So that was right near the end of the episode of the season. Now, I love Mooney. If you've been watching the videos, you'll know how much I was so excited when she got resurrected. I loved her in season 1, and then when they killed her off I was a bit upset, so to bring her back was amazing basically. That's all I've got really to say about that. Number 3 then, my third, we're in the top 3 now, which was Bruce's confrontation of Matches Malone, and that was in episode 14, This Ball of Mud and Meanness. By the way guys, all of my reviews are up on YouTube, so you can go back and watch each individual episode, reviewed in full if you have an interest in watching them all. And haven't yet, go and watch them. Now the confrontation between Bruce and Matches Malone is on my list because it was a fantastic moment, I think, for Bruce, and there was amazing writing, it was amazing, the drama, it was really tense, everything was just really good. It came together to make a fantastic scene, which I really enjoyed. So yeah, there's that. Number 2 then is Penguin killing his stepfamily in episode 17, Into the Woods. Again, the way that it was directed, the way that it was acted by Robin Lord Taylor, who plays Penguin, the way it was written it was very interestingly written scene, and I think it was just very brutal, which I quite liked, the way that he cooked up Grace and Charles, not Grace and Charles, sorry, Sasha. Grace calls her Sasha, and Charles into for Sunday lunch or whatever it is, and then feeds it to Grace and then kills Grace. I thought it was a very good scene. And finally then, my number 1, my top moment of the second half of the season, was the release of Strange's Monsters into Gotham, which happened right at the end of episode 22, Transference. And the reason why this is number 1 is because it was an interesting moment. It probably wasn't the most exciting moment of the series, of the season, you know, the second half of the season, but it definitely was one of the most interesting and one of probably the top event for me. It is the top event for me because it just sets up the third season that we're getting, which is starting to air in America in September, I think. So I don't know if we're getting it in September over here in the UK or whether it's going to be in January. But it set up season 3 really well, which means that we are waiting in anticipation for what's going to happen now. The strangest monsters are out into the city. And I want to know what's going to happen. It sets up so many questions. Who are the villains? You know, what villains have been released? Who are they? What are their personalities like? What do they mean for Gotham? And what is going to happen? And how are they going to solve this? You know, how are the police led by Harvey Bullock? How are they going to solve the problem that has been presented to them? So now we're going to move on to the second section of the review then, which is my top 5 character development moments. So number 5 then, we have Azrael stabbing Tabitha in episode 20, Unleashed. Now, this was probably this was my number 5 for the reason that it was, obviously Azrael was Theo Galavan resurrected, you know, one of our villains from the first half. Theo Galavan, who went on to become the mayor of Gotham and then wanted to kill Bruce, if you remember all that far back. If you don't, go and refresh your memory. And he ended up stabbing Tabitha, who is his sister, and I thought it was a really weird scene, but it was a really good scene because it developed his character loads from the point where he cared so much about you know, Tabitha, and then went on to kill her almost. She didn't die, but he did stab her, and it was quite a weird sort of thing. We weren't really expecting it. I certainly wasn't expecting it, which is why it's one of my character development moments, because it means that I think his character had developed so far away from the original Galavan that we'd seen at the beginning of the season to this, you know, broken kind of shell of a man who was being controlled by Strange psychologically, who is Azrael. And number 4 on my list also comes from episode 20, Unleashed, and it is Butch killing Azrael with an RPG, which again was a fantastic moment, and I think it really gave Butch a sense of control that he hadn't had, I don't think, for much of these last couple of seasons, since his brainwashing in season 1 by Victor Zaz, and it's all been it's been a little bit weird, to be honest. It hasn't really been much of a, it's been more probably, Butch has come into his own this season, definitely. There's been a lot more storyline for Butch this season, but at the same time, I don't really know whether it is, I don't know, there's something in it that's not quite been right for Butch, whereas that episode, that moment really brought out for me a new character, or a new developed character in Butch, which we haven't really seen before, and also it was just a fantastic moment with weaponry beyond, you know, Butch has got all the best weaponry. Sorry, Butch has got all the best weaponry this season. That's fact, basically. And I don't care, you're not arguing with me because that is fact. So yeah, number 3 then, sorry if I get the right numbers. Number 3, Gordon framed for murder and sentenced in episode 15, Mad Grey Dawn. Now, obviously, you'll know what I'm talking about if you've watched episode 15 and also episode 16, Prisoners, but we're not talking about episode 16, we're talking about episode 15, Mad Grey Dawn. Gordon framed for murder, I think having him being framed for murder really developed not only his character, but also the person who framed him, which was Nigma, which we're also, I'll come on to in a second. Gordon's framed for murder, I think, really brought out a sense that he suddenly realised that he is not invincible. He's not as invincible as he thought he was. He's not, you know, he's really not the person that he thought he was. I think it's changed him as a person. It's changed him and made him realise a lot of things. I mean, he was only in prison for 1 episode, but I think it really brought out that sense of vulnerability and actually sense of the fact that he isn't invincible. Like, we knew he wasn't because he's only a human, but I think he was feeling that he was invincible, and that's what kind of shocked him more. I think that he wasn't invincible. So on my number 2 spot, then we have Nigma's confession to Jim in episode 17, Into the Woods. Again, don't start singing if you're a musicals fan. I keep singing it every time I see that title. if you have no idea what Into the Woods is, then don't worry. It's a very good musical. But I'm not here to talk about musicals. I'm here to talk about Gotham. Nigma's confession, I think it really made a difference to the story because I wasn't quite expecting Nigma to get away with it. I think, or no, sorry, I was expecting Nigma to get away with it. I wasn't quite expecting him to be so, I guess, honest, really, I suppose. I wasn't really expecting him to be honest about you know, what he'd done. But there we go. He did. He was honest, and he owned up to his mistakes that he made, and that was really it. I think for Enigma, it was a very interesting development. I think in his character, where he went from being the villain to being locked up alongside Jim in or he went to Arkham Asylum and was locked up. And I think that was a very interesting move that they decided to make with his character this season. So on my number one spot then, you may think all of them are very good, and I think all of them were excellent, but I think actually number one this week for me is Selina, or this season's, this second half, sorry, Selina becoming Bridget's servant in episode 21, A Legion of Horribles. Now the reason why I put this at number one, and you may think it's a bit of an insignificant thing, but I think it was actually very important because we got to see Selina actually thinking, and it made us realise that actually she's not a little child like we kind of envision her as. I think, you know, she's only 14, or the character is only about 15 or 16, so we don't think that she's all that smart, but I think actually she's one of the smartest characters there is in this programme because she makes all of these informed decisions, and actually she worked really well, and then she managed to get out of the situation, and she managed to stop herself from being killed. So as far as I'm concerned, that means that the greatest character development moment goes to Selina Kyle, played by a wonderful Cameron B. Condova, who I absolutely love. You know, she's a fantastic actress, and I really couldn't praise her more. So yeah, I just really like the fact that they made Selina become Bridget's servant. I think it really brought out also a sense of vulnerability, like Jim, I suppose. We got to see a bit of a soft side of Selina this season. We had her cry a few times, and I think that was really good that it brought out the sensitive side of Selina, because we don't want to see just two-dimensional characters where they've all got just one emotion and that's it. I think we like to see a lot of different emotions coming from our characters. So finally we come to the last section in my review, and that is my top 3 episodes of the season, or of the second half. So at number 3 then we have episode 22, Transference. Because because I really enjoyed it as a season finale. I thought it was much better than last year's season finale, even though last season was absolutely incredible. This year's season finale just was that a little bit more exciting. It was much better. It was much more polished and much more refined, and I think it just felt, it wrapped everything up really nicely, whereas season 1 wrapped everything up but rushed it a little bit, and it felt like there was still something a bit missing and something that needed, some questions that needed answered in season 2 which weren't really answered, and it just kind of made for a little bit of a messy storyline. But yeah, this season's finale was much better than last season's finale. And at number 2 then we have episode 20, Unleashed. So that was the episode where Azrael, obviously it was the second after Azrael had been resurrected in the end of episode 18. He then came out in episode 19, Azrael, and was terrorising everyone. But Unleashed was a little bit more on that storyline. It kind of serialised it a little bit more and made for a much more exciting storyline with Azrael, and I think that was what made me more excited about it, was because it was more of Azrael's storyline, which is why it's on my number 2 spot. And finally, my number 1 spot for this top episode of Wrath of the Villains goes to, drum roll, boom, episode 17, Into the Woods. Because I just felt it was such a good episode, the way that they did everything, and the bit where they went into the woods, it was so tense, it was so dramatic, and I think it just really worked. It was a brilliant episode. It probably was my favourite episode of certainly this half of the season, because of that drama, the suspense, everything just worked really. There wasn't a bad moment, or there wasn't a slow moment. Everything worked really well, and even if it was slower in pace, it was not slow in drama. There was just drama all the way through the episode. It was just brilliant, 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 from one section, one scene to the next. it just flowed so smoothly. Everything worked so well. The direction was fantastic. The writing was fantastic. The acting was fantastic. And everything just was fantastic, really. So yeah, that's my top episode for the second half of the season. So I hope you've enjoyed this review, guys. There will be one more in my Gotham Season 2 series, and that will be the complete Season 2 review, which will be talking about both halves of the season together, so my top 5 character moments from that, top 5 events, my favourite 3 episodes, and also my worst 3 episodes, or my least favourite episodes, which I have also included, but I didn't include on the 2 halves, because I thought, well, if we've only got 11 episodes to review, then I don't want to seem really picky and leave 5 episodes out. I want to talk about 22 episodes, and then I can do 3 and 3 and 6. So I have 18 that we won't have mentioned. Sorry, 16 that we won't have mentioned in the 6 that I'm going to talk about episode wise. If that makes sense. You'll find that you'll see what happens when we get to the final review for season 2. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you have enjoyed this review. As I said. Please like and subscribe down below in the box down below where I am sitting currently on your screens. If you've watched this far, then thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all again very soon. Bye!